The note under the silver dome. The Obsidian court didn't glow the way human palaces did. It didn't need gold or sunlight. It glowed with moonlight trapped in black crystal, with candle flame reflected 100 times through red-stained glass, with the quiet terror of nobles who knew one wrong breath could cost them their lives. And tonight that terror was rehearsed. Every table setting was identical: silver plates, onyx goblets, linen so dark it looked like spilled ink. Every servant moved in perfect silence, like ghosts trained to forget they were alive. Every noble smiled with the careful softness of people who had practiced pretending to be loyal. At the center of it all sat Vampire King Aurelian Nightthorn, the ruler whose reign had outlasted dynasties, plagues, wars, whose patience had turned into something sharper than cruelty. He wore ceremonial black and crimson. A crown of dark metal, thin as a blade, circled his temples. He didn't need to speak to command the room. He simply existed, and the world arranged itself around him. The feast began with ritual, a vow spoken in ancient tongue, a toast to unity, a promise of one blood, one throne. The noble houses bowed their heads. Their hands pressed to their chests in a gesture that meant devotion. Aurelian watched without blinking. He had attended 1,000 such ceremonies. He knew the patterns the way a predator knows the heartbeat of prey. He knew who wanted his favor, who wanted his fall, and who could hide ambition behind pretty words. Still, something felt wrong. Not loud wrong. Not obvious. It was the kind of wrong that lived in small details: timing, posture, silence. The steward announced the first course too quickly. The musicians played too softly. The laughter in the hall sounded like it had been placed there on purpose, as if the nobles were afraid that quiet would reveal something. Aurelian's gaze moved across the room, reading it like scripture. Then he saw her. She wasn't a noble. Not even close. She wore the plain uniform of the court servers: black dress, white apron, hair pinned back tightly. Her hands carried a silver cloche, heavy, polished, domed, like she was delivering a treasure. Except she didn't move like someone proud to be near greatness. She moved like someone trying not to be noticed. Her name, Aurelian later learned, was Seraphina Crow, but the world mostly called her Sarah. A waitress in a kingdom that didn't care about waitresses. A small, quiet human girl working in the shadow of immortal monsters. Tonight she was trembling. Not the dramatic trembling of fear that begs for attention. The controlled trembling of someone who has made a choice and is forcing her body to obey it. She approached the king's table. The air around him felt heavier, like gravity itself sharpened. Most servants couldn't get close without their breath stuttering. Sarah kept walking. Her eyes stayed down. Her face was calm in the way people look calm when they have no choice. She placed the cloche in front of Aurelian with perfect etiquette. The movement was trained. Then, so quick it looked like an accident, her fingers slipped something beneath the edge of the silver dome. Aurelian didn't move. But he felt it. A sliver of parchment brushed the plate. Her pulse thundered loud enough for him to count its panicked rhythm. Her scent carried a note of metal, fear, determination, and something else. Not selfish fear. Protective fear. Her eyes lifted for half a heartbeat and met his. They were not pleading. They were warning. Then she turned and vanished back into the line of servants like she had never existed. Aurelian waited exactly 3 seconds, long enough that no one could accuse him of reacting. Then he slid the parchment into his palm. 7 words scratched in trembling ink. Do not eat. The feast is poisoned. Lucius knows. For the first time in centuries, something inside Aurelian tightened. Not his throat. Not his lungs, he didn't need those the way humans did. His blood. His ancient blood remembered what fear tasted like. Because poison at the Obsidian court wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was a declaration of war. His gaze swept the nobles again. 100 faces watched him with polite indifference, with staged admiration, with shallow smiles. And among them, Lord Lucius Varick sat comfortably, hands folded, expression mild, as if he was already certain of the ending. Lucius was one of the king's oldest allies. A man who had poured blood beside Aurelian in battle. A man whose loyalty had once been unquestioned. Your Majesty? The steward asked softly. Shall we unveil the course? Aurelian didn't answer. He stared at the cloche like it was a coffin. Then he placed one hand on the silver dome and lifted it. The scent that rose was rich, roasted meat, herbs, dark fruit. To any noble it would smell like luxury. To a vampire king, it smelled like a lie wrapped in perfume. Aurelian's senses went deeper than taste. He could detect the sharpness behind sweetness, the wrongness hiding in spice. He leaned slightly forward. A faint bitterness touched the air. Subtle. Clever. A poison designed for immortals. The hall waited. The nobles held their breath, pretending they weren't. Aurelian set the cloche down again. Slowly. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, polite enough to be mistaken for approval, unless you knew him. Unless you knew that Aurelian Nightthorn only smiled when something was about to break. Begin, he said calmly. The musicians played a little louder, relieved. Servants moved to unveil dishes across the hall. Nobles lifted forks and goblets. Lucius's gaze flicked to Aurelian's plate, quick, hungry. Aurelian did not eat. Instead he raised his goblet. To loyalty, he said, voice smooth as velvet over steel. The nobles echoed, to loyalty. Aurelian's eyes found Lucius. And to the ones who serve, Aurelian added, still calm. The unseen hands that keep kingdoms alive. Some nobles blinked at that, confused. Serving staff were not usually mentioned in royal toasts. In the servants' line, Sarah froze for a fraction of a second. Aurelian continued, bring me the girl who delivered my cloche. The music faltered. The steward hesitated, just a breath too long. Aurelian noticed. So did Lucius. Lucius's smile remained, but his jaw tightened. The steward bowed. At once, your majesty. A ripple moved through the court like cold wind. Servants looked at each other nervously. Nobles leaned closer to whisper. Sarah meanwhile felt the floor tilt beneath her. She had known this moment would come the second she wrote the note. She had known that warning the king meant stepping into the center of the storm. But she had also known something else. If she stayed silent, people would die. Not just nobles, servants too. Humans, vampires, anyone caught in the blast radius of betrayal. And she couldn't bear the thought of innocent people punished for the arrogance of powerful men. 2 guards approached her. Their eyes were pale and empty, trained to obedience. One held out his hand, not unkindly but not gently either. Sarah placed her trembling fingers in his palm. The hall went quiet as she walked forward. 100 immortal eyes studied her like she was a strange animal that had wandered into the wrong room. Some nobles smirked. Some looked annoyed. Some looked bored. Lucius watched with interest that felt like a blade. Aurelian watched differently. Not like prey. Like a question. Sarah reached the king's table and bowed as she had been taught. Your Majesty, she whispered. Aurelian leaned slightly forward. Your name. Seraphina Crow, she said. Then quickly, Sarah. Sarah? Aurelian repeated as if testing the sound. The nobles shifted. A human name spoken by a vampire king sounded like a crack in the world. Aurelian's voice remained gentle. Why did you send me that note? Sarah's throat tightened. A lie would get her killed. The truth might get her killed faster. So she did what she had always done in her life. She chose honesty even when it cost her. Because you were going to die, she said softly. And everyone here would pretend it was fate. A sharp whisper ran through the hall. Lucius chuckled lightly as if amused. How dramatic. A kitchen girl accusing the court of poison. Sarah didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the king. Aurelian's gaze remained on Sarah too. What did you smell? He asked. Sarah's lips parted, surprised. How did you know? Aurelian corrected, patient. Sarah swallowed. The steward made us taste test small portions earlier, she said. The new sauce. He said it was tradition. But after one of the older servers tasted it, her hands started shaking. Then she collapsed behind the pantry doors. They dragged her away. The hall went still. Even Lucius's smile stiffened. Sarah continued, voice trembling but determined. I followed. I saw her on the floor. She couldn't breathe. Her eyes were wide like she wanted to scream but couldn't. I tried to help, but the steward shoved me away and told me to mind my place. Aurelian's fingers tightened slightly around his goblet. You're human, Aurelian said quietly. That poison would have killed you too if you tasted enough. Sarah nodded. I know. Why risk it? Sarah's eyes shimmered. Because no one else was going to speak. Because she wasn't a noble. Because she was just a server. Like me. And people like us don't get justice unless we make noise. Some nobles scoffed, offended at the word justice. Aurelian's voice turned colder. And you believe Lord Lucius Varick is involved? Sarah hesitated. Saying his name out loud felt like stepping on broken glass. I heard him, she whispered. Not here. Earlier. In the corridor near the kitchen. He told the steward, make sure the king eats first. And then he laughed. Like it was a joke. Lucius stood slowly, clap clap clap. 3 applause beats, mocking. Your Majesty, Lucius said, smiling. Are we truly letting a frightened waitress, likely bribed by some rival, disrupt sacred tradition? Aurelian didn't look away from Sarah. Sarah, he said softly, if you are lying, the truth will find you. Sarah met his eyes. Then let it. Aurelian's expression changed, almost imperceptible. Respect. Not romance yet. Not softness. But recognition. Because humans usually begged him. This one stood. Aurelian rose from his seat. The entire hall rose with him by instinct. Silence fell so heavy it felt like snow. Aurelian spoke, voice calm, and somehow more terrifying because it wasn't angry. Lock the doors, he ordered. Guards moved instantly. Iron and magic sealed the exits. Panic flickered in noble eyes. Lucius's smile finally slipped. Aurelian, don't be foolish. This is theater. Aurelian turned his gaze to Lucius at last. Perhaps, the king said. But I have learned something over centuries, Lucius. He stepped forward. When a powerless voice risks everything to speak, it is because the powerful have been lying for too long. Aurelian gestured to the dishes being served across the hall. Bring me the steward, he ordered. The steward, pale and sweating, was dragged forward. Aurelian inhaled near the man's throat. Then, to the shock of the nobles, Aurelian placed the steward's hand over the king's own plate. Eat, Aurelian said softly. The steward shook his head violently. Your Majesty, I cannot. Aurelian's eyes darkened. You can. Or you can explain why you can't. The steward's knees hit the floor. Lucius's voice sharpened. Enough. You are humiliating your own court. Aurelian didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He looked at Lucius and said, I am revealing it. Then he leaned closer to the steward. What is in the sauce? Aurelian asked. The steward sobbed. I don't know. I swear. Aurelian's gaze slid to the guards. Take him to the truth chamber. The words made the entire court flinch. The truth chamber wasn't torture in the human sense. It was worse. It stripped lies from the soul until there was nothing left to hide. The steward was dragged away screaming. Aurelian turned back to Sarah. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. No one had told her those words in a long time. But then Aurelian added, and now you are in danger. Sarah's breath caught. I know. Aurelian's voice dropped further. Because the people who planned this will not forgive you. Aurelian looked toward Lucius again. And some of them are very close to me. Lucius's eyes gleamed. Careful, Your Majesty. Accusations can become civil war. Aurelian's mouth curved into that small, dangerous smile. Then we will see who deserves to survive it. He lifted his hand and the guards moved. Lucius stepped back. Aurelian. The king's voice cut through the hall like a blade. By dawn the poisoner will be named, Aurelian said. And the one who tried to hide behind power will learn what power truly costs. Sarah stood frozen beside the king's table, heart hammering, realizing she had just changed the fate of an empire with a scrap of paper. And somehow, the most feared vampire in the world was looking at her not like a servant, but like the beginning of a truth he could no longer ignore. By midnight, the Obsidian court had transformed from a feast into a cage. The doors were sealed. The guards doubled. Nobles whispered in corners like snakes pretending to be silk. Servants were ordered into separate halls, watched closely, their faces pale with fear. Sarah expected to be thrown into a dungeon. Instead, Aurelian ordered her brought to a small chamber behind the throne, warm by candlelight, lined with dark velvet curtains that muted sound. It smelled of old books and iron. A room designed for private decisions. Aurelian stood near the window, staring at the moon as if the sky owed him answers. Sarah remained near the door, hands clasped tight, trying not to shake. You shouldn't be here, she blurted, because silence felt unbearable. I shouldn't be here. Aurelian didn't turn. You shouldn't be alive, he corrected softly. Not if Lucius truly planned what I suspect. Sarah's stomach dropped. So you believe me? I believe, Aurelian said, that you had no reason to risk everything unless you saw something real. His voice was calm, but underneath it, something burned. Not rage. Betrayal. Sarah swallowed. Why would someone poison you? You're the king. Aurelian finally looked at her. His eyes were not red like the stories. They were dark, almost black, like a midnight sea. Ancient. Heavy. Because kings make enemies by breathing, he said. And because my rule is inconvenient to those who want chaos. Sarah's hands tightened together. Lucius didn't seem afraid. That, Aurelian said, is what scares me. Aurelian moved toward a table where a sealed bottle sat, blood wine untouched. He didn't drink. He watched Sarah instead, as if deciding what category she belonged to: threat, pawn, witness, or something rarer. Tell me about the server who collapsed, Aurelian said. Sarah's eyes stung. Her name is Mina. She has a son. She works double shifts because the court pays humans less. When she collapsed, they didn't call a healer. They dragged her away like trash. Aurelian's gaze sharpened. Where is she now? I don't know, Sarah whispered. The steward took her. Aurelian's jaw tightened slightly. A silence stretched between them, one filled with the weight of the same ugly truth. In a world of powerful beings, the powerless were always disposable. Then the door opened. A guard bowed. Your Majesty. The steward has confessed. Aurelian didn't move. Bring the report. The guard handed him a black scroll sealed with wax. Aurelian broke it, read quickly, then closed his eyes for a brief moment that looked almost like pain. Sarah's voice came out small. What did he say? Aurelian opened his eyes. He said Lucius ordered it, Aurelian replied. And he said Lucius was not alone. Sarah's breath caught. Who else? Aurelian's expression turned colder. A council of nobles. 3 houses. Sarah's knees felt weak. So, what happens now? Aurelian walked closer, close enough that Sarah could feel the strange chill that surrounded him, the quiet pressure of something not human. Now, Aurelian said, they will try to erase you. Sarah's throat tightened. Because I spoke. Because you saw, Aurelian corrected. And because you embarrassed them. Sarah forced herself to meet his eyes. Then let them come. Aurelian studied her as if he couldn't decide whether she was brave or foolish. Humans are fragile, he said. Your courage does not make you immortal. Sarah's voice trembled, but she didn't look away. And your immortality didn't keep you safe tonight. So maybe, courage matters. For a heartbeat, Aurelian's expression shifted. Something like surprise, like the smallest crack in centuries of controlled distance. Then the sound of shouting echoed faintly from the main hall. Aurelian's head turned. The guard stiffened. There's unrest, Your Majesty. The nobles are demanding you reopen the doors. Aurelian's voice went calm again. Let them demand. But Sarah felt it, something tightening in the air, like the palace itself was holding its breath. Aurelian turned to the guard. Move Sarah to the east wing. 2 guards. Quietly. Sarah blinked. Why? Because, Aurelian said softly, I would prefer you alive when dawn arrives. Sarah's heart stumbled at the word prefer, as if her life mattered. She followed the guards through shadowed corridors, past statues of old kings, past stained glass windows that painted her skin in blood-colored light. She tried to breathe evenly, but fear kept climbing her spine. In the east wing, they placed her in a small room meant for visiting diplomats, luxurious compared to her tiny servant quarters. Stay inside, the guard ordered. Do not open the door. Sarah nodded. The guard stepped outside. For the first time since she wrote the note, Sarah was alone. And that was when the fear hit fully. Her hands shook. Her knees gave out and she slid down against the door, fighting tears. Because bravery is easy in the moment you decide. It's harder in the quiet afterward, when you realize what your decision costs. Hours passed. Then, softly, someone knocked. Sarah froze. The guards didn't speak. The knock came again, gentle. Sarah, a voice whispered. It's Mina. Sarah's breath caught. Mina. The server who collapsed. Sarah rushed to the door. Her hand hovered over the latch. Then she hesitated. Because something felt wrong. Mina's voice trembled. Please. They're going to kill me. Let me in. Sarah pressed her forehead to the wood. Where are the guards? Silence. Then Mina whispered, they're gone. Sarah's heart pounded. Her instinct screamed, don't open. But her compassion screamed louder, what if it's real? Sarah swallowed, voice shaking. Say my mother's name. Another silence. Then the voice outside changed, slightly deeper, colder. I don't need your mother's name, it said. I need your death. The door exploded inward. Sarah screamed and fell back as a shadowy figure surged into the room, fast, unnatural, eyes glowing with hunger. An assassin. A vampire, cloaked in court darkness. Sarah scrambled toward the window, but the assassin grabbed her wrist, crushing bone with ease. Little human, the assassin hissed, you should have stayed silent. Sarah's throat tightened. She kicked, fought, clawed, desperate, useless. Then the air shifted. A pressure dropped into the room like a mountain. The assassin froze. Aurelian stood in the doorway, expression unreadable, eyes darker than the night. He had moved without sound. Without warning. Just presence. The assassin's grip loosened slightly, fear creeping into his face. "My king," the assassin whispered. Aurelian's voice was soft. "Who sent you?" The assassin shook his head violently. "No one." Aurelian didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He only looked at the assassin the way winter looks at a leaf. "Lie again," Aurelian said, "and I will let the sun find you." The assassin trembled. "Lord Lucius," he choked. "He said the girl must die before dawn." Sarah's breath hitched. Aurelian's gaze flicked briefly to her bruised wrist. And in that flicker Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. Not just protectiveness. Possessive fury. Not romantic, yet. But primal. Like the king had decided something belonged to his responsibility now. Aurelian stepped forward and placed his hand on the assassin's forehead. The assassin screamed. Not from pain, Aurelian wasn't tearing flesh. He was tearing truth. The assassin collapsed, unconscious, eyes rolled back. Aurelian turned to Sarah. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. Sarah stared at him, stunned. You knew." Aurelian's jaw tightened. "I knew they would try." Sarah's voice cracked. "Then why leave me alone?" Aurelian's eyes didn't flinch. "Because I needed to know who would come for you." Sarah's stomach twisted at the cold strategy of it, then she realized something else. He came anyway. Fast. Like he couldn't tolerate her dying. Sarah whispered, "Mina, was that?" "Impersonated," Aurelian said. "And Mina is likely being held." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "She's going to die because of me." Aurelian's voice lowered. "No." He stepped closer and for the first time, his tone carried something almost human. "She is going to live," he said. "Because of you." Aurelian turned to the guards in the hall. "Search the kitchens. The storage tunnels. Every hidden chamber beneath this court. Bring Mina Crow, alive." Sarah flinched. "Mina isn't Crow. I am." Aurelian's gaze sharpened. "Then you will help me find her. You know the servants' routes better than any noble." Sarah stared. "You're taking me with you?" Aurelian nodded once. "I don't trust the court with you out of my sight." Sarah's heart hammered. She should have been terrified. She was. But beneath the terror, something else flickered. A strange warmth at the thought that the most feared being in the world had decided her life mattered enough to guard personally. Aurelian offered his hand. Sarah hesitated, then placed her bruised fingers into his palm. His skin was cold, but his grip was steady. And the moment their hands touched, the air between them changed. Subtle, quiet, like fate clearing its throat. The servant tunnels and the secret under Sarah's skin. The servants' tunnels beneath the Obsidian court weren't meant for nobles to see. They were narrow, damp, carved through stone like a confession the palace tried to hide. The air smelled of dust, old water, and the faint bitterness of fear. Torches burned low, their flames small and exhausted, as if even fire didn't feel safe down here. Sarah moved quickly despite her bruised wrist. Her memory knew every turn, every loose stone, every hidden latch behind hanging cloth. Aurelian followed behind her without a torch. He didn't need one. The darkness seemed to recognize him. 2 guards trailed further back, silent as shadows, but Sarah could feel their nervousness. Vampires could be fearless on battlefields, yet uneasy in the places where power was not polished and worshipped, where servants whispered, where secrets grew teeth. "This way," Sarah whispered, pushing aside a curtain. They entered a storage chamber packed with barrels of spice, sacks of grain, and racks of silver trays. Everything smelled too clean, too carefully arranged. Sarah paused. Her instincts prickled. "Someone's been down here recently," she murmured. Aurelian's head tilted. "How do you know?" Sarah pointed to the floor. "Dust is disturbed. And the spice," she inhaled, "the scent is wrong. Someone used strong herbs to cover another smell." Aurelian's gaze sharpened, impressed despite himself. They moved deeper. Then Sarah saw it, a thin line in the stone wall, almost invisible. A hidden door. Most servants never knew it existed. Sarah only knew because once, when she was new, she got lost and pressed her hand against this wall, and felt it shift. She reached for the latch. Aurelian stopped her gently. His hand touched her shoulder, cold but steady. "I will open it," he said. Sarah nodded. Aurelian pressed his palm to the stone. The wall clicked, shifted, opened. A faint smell drifted out, blood, sweat, and something sharp like panic. Sarah's stomach turned. They entered. The hidden passage was darker, narrower. Then they heard it, a weak cough. Sarah rushed forward. In a small chamber chained to the wall, Mina lay crumpled on the floor. Her skin was pale, lips cracked, eyes half open. She looked barely alive. Sarah dropped to her knees beside her. Mina. Mina's eyes focused slowly. Sarah? She rasped, voice broken. Tears burned Sarah's eyes. I'm here. You're okay. You're... Mina coughed, shaking. They made me taste it again. To test the poison. Sarah's chest tightened. Rage rose hot and helpless. Aurelian stepped forward, gaze turning into something deadly. He knelt beside Mina, not like a king, not like a noble, but like a predator examining damage. Who did this? He asked softly. Mina's eyes widened at the sight of him. Terror flickered. Sarah took Mina's hand. It's okay. He's not here to hurt you. Mina swallowed hard. The steward, and a man in a gray cloak. He had a ring. A serpent. Aurelian's eyes narrowed. Lucius. Always Lucius. Aurelian snapped his fingers. A guard moved in, breaking Mina's chains carefully. Sarah helped Mina sit up. Mina's gaze shifted to Aurelian, fear still trembling in it. Your Majesty. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Aurelian cut her off gently. You did nothing wrong. Mina blinked, stunned. Aurelian's voice stayed calm. You were used. Mina's eyes filled with tears, as if those words unlocked something she had been forced to bury. Sarah looked up at Aurelian, surprised. This wasn't the cruel vampire king in servant whispers. This was something colder but fair, something that recognized injustice and didn't excuse it. Aurelian turned to the guards. Get her to a healer. Quietly. The guards nodded, lifting Mina. Sarah stood, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Aurelian studied Sarah's face, her bruised wrist, the anger she tried to hide. You care for them, he said. They're people, Sarah snapped, then softened, ashamed of her tone. Sorry? We get treated like we're nothing. Aurelian's gaze didn't harden. It deepened. Not nothing, he said quietly. Not to me. Sarah froze at that. Before she could speak, a faint noise echoed down the passage, a footstep. Aurelian's head turned. He moved instantly, placing himself between Sarah and the darkness. A figure stepped into the tunnel, tall, cloaked, face hidden. Lucius. His voice came smooth and amused. Your Majesty. How predictable. The mighty king crawling through servant tunnels. Aurelian's tone was ice. You poison my table, then follow me beneath my court. You are either bold or stupid. Lucius laughed softly. Neither. I'm practical. He took a step forward. Sarah's body tensed, but Aurelian's arm extended slightly, a protective barrier without even touching her. Lucius's gaze flicked to Sarah. Ah, the girl. The problem. Sarah's spine chilled. The way Lucius said problem wasn't personal. It was political. Like she was an inconvenient truth. Lucius smiled at her. Did you enjoy your moment of importance, little waitress? Sarah forced her voice steady. You tried to kill him. Lucius shrugged. Kings die. Empires shift. That's history. Aurelian's eyes darkened. And servants? Lucius's smile didn't falter. Servants are replaceable. Sarah's fists clenched. Aurelian's voice lowered, dangerous. Say that again. Lucius's gaze met Aurelian's, unafraid. You know I'm right. You've ruled for centuries. You've watched humans live and die like sparks. Why pretend this one matters? Aurelian's answer wasn't a roar. It was quieter. And somehow worse. Because she spoke when my nobles stayed silent, Aurelian said. Because she risked everything for strangers. Because she reminded me what loyalty actually looks like. Lucius's eyes narrowed. Don't romanticize her. She's manipulating you. Sarah flinched, then felt Aurelian's presence steady her. Aurelian stepped closer to Lucius. You poisoned the feast. Why? Lucius's smile sharpened. Because you've grown soft. You speak of fairness. You look at servants like they're equal. You weaken our world with your compassion. Aurelian's gaze didn't blink. Compassion is not weakness. Lucius leaned forward slightly. It is to vampires who survive by dominance. You've been preaching restraint. Denying noble houses their rights. Lowering punishments. Protecting humans. He spat the word protecting like an insult. Sarah realized then, this wasn't just about one assassination attempt. This was ideology. A war over what kind of king Aurelian would be. Lucius lifted his hand, showing the serpent ring. This court belongs to those strong enough to take it, Lucius said. You've forgotten that. So we're reminding you. Aurelian's voice turned deadly. You are confessing treason. Lucius smiled. I'm confessing inevitability. Then Lucius's eyes shifted to Sarah. And the temperature dropped. Lucius whispered a word in a language that scraped the ears like broken glass. Sarah gasped. Pain tore through her skin, like invisible claws under her ribs. She stumbled, clutching her chest. Aurelian spun toward her. Sarah. Sarah dropped to her knees, vision blurring, breathing ragged. Her wrist burned. Her palm burned. A mark, something dark, began to rise beneath her skin, glowing faintly like ink turning into fire. Aurelian's eyes widened. He recognized it. Lucius's smile returned, triumphant. So you didn't know, he murmured. You didn't even know what you are. Sarah shook, terrified. What is happening to me? Aurelian's voice turned controlled, urgent. Stay with me. Lucius stepped back, satisfied. She's not just a waitress, Aurelian. She's a key. A relic. A threat. Sarah's breath hitched. I don't understand. Lucius tilted his head. Her blood carries an old signature. Ancient. The kind that can open sealed things. Aurelian's jaw tightened. Sarah's pain flared again and the mark on her palm brightened. An intricate symbol like a crown made of thorns and moons. Aurelian stared at it like he had seen it in nightmares. Lucius's voice went soft. You see now why she must die. Because if she lives, your throne becomes negotiable. Aurelian's gaze lifted, murderous. If you touch her again? Lucius smirked. You can't protect her forever. Then Lucius vanished into the darkness, moving too fast for guards, too fast for humans, leaving only cold laughter behind. Sarah collapsed forward, shaking. Aurelian caught her before she hit the stone. He held her carefully, like she was fragile, like he could break her with a thought but refused to. Sarah's voice came out broken. I'm not magical. I'm nobody. Aurelian's expression was fierce and strangely gentle at once. No, he said quietly. You are not nobody. He looked at the mark on her palm, then into her eyes. You are the reason the court is trembling, he whispered. And now, you are the reason my enemies are desperate. Sarah's tears fell. Aurelian's thumb brushed them away, one slow motion that felt like a vow. I will not let them erase you, he said. Sarah trembled, staring at him, realizing the slow-burn truth. The king wasn't just protecting her out of strategy anymore. He was protecting her like she had become part of his own fate. The Obsidian trial and the king who chose a servant. Dawn didn't bring light to the Obsidian court. It brought judgment. The nobles were summoned to the grand hall, no longer a feast chamber but a tribunal. The stained glass bled red moonlight across the floor. Guards lined the walls. The air tasted like iron. Sarah stood beside Aurelian's throne, not on the servant line. Beside the throne. Whispers exploded across the noble houses. A human girl, bruised and pale, standing where immortal aristocrats believed only bloodlines belonged. Lucius stood among the nobles, calm and perfectly dressed as if he had already won. The steward was dragged in next, trembling, broken, eyes haunted from the truth chamber. Aurelian sat high, posture still, face unreadable. He raised one hand. Silence fell like a curtain. The Obsidian court has been poisoned, Aurelian said, voice steady. And the attempt on my life is only the smallest crime committed here. He gestured toward the steward. Speak. The steward sobbed. Lord Lucius ordered it. He gave the serpent ring as proof. He said the king must die before the vow. He said the houses would back him. Nobles gasped. Lucius laughed softly. A confession extracted by fear is meaningless. Aurelian's gaze didn't shift. Then you will not mind evidence. Aurelian lifted a small vial. Inside it, the sauce from the feast. He gestured to a silver bowl placed before the nobles. House Varick, Aurelian said calmly, you will drink first. Lucius's smile flickered. A noble beside Lucius stepped forward, voice shaking. Your Majesty, this is mercy, Aurelian replied. Because the alternative is immediate execution. Lucius raised a hand gently. Aurelian, this is absurd. You will ignite war over a rumor and a waitress. Sarah's stomach tightened at the word waitress, like it was an insult meant to cut her back into her place. Aurelian leaned forward slightly. Do you know what I find most fascinating? Aurelian asked softly. Lucius's eyes narrowed. Enlighten us. Aurelian's voice remained calm. You believe her status makes her incapable of truth. Lucius shrugged. I believe her status makes her easy to use. Aurelian's gaze sharpened. And that belief is why you are dangerous. He turned to the crowd. This court has spent centuries surviving on fear, Aurelian said. Not just fear of me, Fear of each other. Fear that kindness is weakness. Fear that respect must be earned through blood. His eyes swept the nobles. And so you created a world where servants are disposable, where humans are silent, where cruelty is tradition. Sarah's throat tightened. Aurelian's voice deepened. That ends today. A noble shouted, outraged. You would change our laws for a human girl? Aurelian's gaze snapped to him. No, he said. I will change them because they are wrong. A hush fell, because kings didn't say wrong. Kings said necessary. Lucius's smile sharpened again. Touching speech. But politics is still politics. You can't rule if your nobles don't follow. Aurelian stood. The room rose instinctively, then froze when they realized the king didn't demand it. His presence did. Aurelian descended the steps slowly. He walked to Sarah. Then, in front of every noble house, Aurelian took Sarah's hand and lifted it. The mark on her palm was visible now, faint, thorned, ancient. Gasps erupted. Lucius's eyes gleamed. There it is. The relic. The key. Now you understand. Aurelian's voice stayed controlled. Yes. He lifted Sarah's hand higher. And I also understand something else, Aurelian said. You hunted her because she threatens your control. Not because she threatened me. Lucius stepped forward. She can open the sealed vault beneath this court. The vault that holds the first blood crown. With it you could be replaced. Nobles murmured wildly. Sarah's breath caught. I don't want any crown. Lucius ignored her. Her bloodline is old. Human but touched by ancient vampire magic. She is the bridge. She is the weapon. Aurelian's voice softened, only toward Sarah. Look at me. Sarah did. His eyes held hers steady. You didn't ask for this, he said quietly. And you will not be punished for it. Sarah's lips trembled. They'll never stop. Aurelian turned back to the nobles, his voice turning iron. Then I will teach them to stop, he said. Aurelian raised his hand. Guards dragged forward 3 nobles, members of the council Lucius had gathered. The steward's confession, the assassin's extracted memory, the serpent ring recovered from the tunnel, evidence piled like stones. Lucius's calm cracked. You're making a mistake, Aurelian? Aurelian's voice lowered. No. I'm making a choice. He pointed toward Lucius. Lord Lucius Varick, Aurelian said, you are stripped of title, stripped of house authority, and condemned. Nobles shouted, some in shock, some in rage. Lucius's eyes went cold. You can't. I can, Aurelian interrupted. Because the throne is mine. Lucius's mouth twisted. You're choosing a human over your own kind. Aurelian's reply was quiet, brutal in its honesty. I'm choosing justice over betrayal, he said. If my kind cannot live with that, then my kind deserves to fall. Silence. Because this wasn't just punishment. This was a new era. Lucius's gaze slid to Sarah with hatred. You think he loves you? You are a tool girl. The moment you outlive your usefulness. Aurelian moved so fast the air snapped. He appeared in front of Lucius, hand wrapped around Lucius's throat, lifting him slightly off the ground. The hall froze. Aurelian's voice was a whisper only Lucius could fully hear. If you speak to her again like she is less than human, Aurelian said, I will remind you what monsters look like. Lucius struggled, eyes blazing. Aurelian released him. Lucius stumbled, coughing, fury vibrating in his body. Aurelian returned to Sarah and, shockingly, did something no one expected. He knelt. A vampire king kneeling before a human waitress. The room erupted into stunned silence. Aurelian looked up at Sarah, voice steady. I cannot promise you a safe life, he said. But I can promise you this, you will not face this court alone. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Why? Aurelian held her gaze, and the truth in his voice made the air feel warmer for a moment. Because you are brave, he said. Because you are kind. And because you reminded me of the part of myself I buried to survive. Sarah's breath shook. Aurelian rose, still holding her hand. And because, he added quieter, when I thought you might die, I realized I did not want a world without you in it. The noble stared. Sarah stared. Aurelian didn't kiss her. Didn't claim her like a prize. He simply stood beside her like a shield and let the court understand. This human girl was not disposable anymore. She was protected. Not by pity. By choice.